I want to tell you about the one thing that some of you may know about me, which is the day that I spoke out against the actions of our former president on June 1st, 2020, because of what happened in front of St. John's Episcopal Church on Lafayette Square. Now, you remember the protests around the country in response to the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis on May 25th of that year had spread across the nation within days. And in Washington, hundreds of young people, mostly young people, were gathering in front of the White House in Lafayette Park each day and into the night. And as in other places, the majority of the protests were peaceful. And we had gathered as church to sort of be hospitable, and we had used Lafayette Square as our launching ground, right? That's where we offered water and masks, prayer. On the night of May 31st, there was arson at St. John's Church, which is across the street from the park, but it was contained, the damage was contained, and we were determined to keep our focus on George Floyd's murder. And throughout the day, on June 1st, President Trump's rhetoric against protesters across the nation grew alarming. And at a press conference in the Rose Garden that afternoon, he threatened military force. And the next thing we knew, police and military officers began to use tear gas and billy clubs to push back all those standing in the park and all those on St. John's courtyard, clearing a path so that President Trump could walk across the park, flanked by his highest advisors and military commanders, stand in front of St. John's Church, holding a Bible for a photograph, and then leave. I was at home at the time, and to be honest, I didn't have time to think. It was one of the purest experiences of immediate response I've ever had in my life. The ball was coming toward the plate at 100 miles an hour. And I used what minimal influence I had to get in front of as many microphones as I could to denounce the president's action and to say that the spiritual mantle he had claimed from our sacred text and from our church did not belong to him. In no way could I allow one of the churches in my care be used for such a purpose. And as it turned out, and the reason I'm mentioning it is, as it turns out, for about 4 days, the microphones and the cameras kept coming, and I kept saying essentially the same thing. And it seemed to other people that I was being very brave. And maybe I was, but in all truth, here's the thing, it felt like being summoned to speak on behalf of other people who were really the brave ones. Others in the church and in our nation who were standing up for racial equity, and others in the church and the nation who were outraged by what they saw. And I was trying to do my best just to hold that moment without losing sight of the larger struggle. And it was a bit like riding a wave. And like all waves, it was all-consuming for a moment. And here's the point. And then it was gone, right? The moment passed, like a player's turn at bat. And if I had thought there was anything more than that moment, I could get really confused about what it means to be faithful. And for me, the most decisive moment of that whirlwind week took place the following Sunday. I was back on what's now called Black Lives Matter Plaza, and I was listening to the words of Bishop William Barber, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign. And we had gathered, and he looked out on this wonderfully multiracial, intergenerational crowd, the kind you aspire to here, right? All ages, all colors, all stripes and types of people. And he said this, he said, "Do not let anyone tell you that this is the first time people of different races, classes, educational backgrounds have come together in this country to fight for a common cause. It has always been such a coalition of the faithful, that has brought about needed change in this country. Black, white, and brown, rich and poor, young and old. Everyone is needed. Everyone has a part to play and an offering to make. And when he said that, I said to God and to the universe, I want to step up like that. I want to be among the coalition of the faithful now. I want to be among those working for the change we need now. And that's the moment that informs my life today. It was private between me and God. It wasn't a new decision, but I felt it in a new way. It doesn't burn in my heart with the same intensity as it did on that Sunday afternoon, but I pray each day for the grace and courage and perseverance to be true to it, even when the passion ebbs and flows. And I pray the same for you. Pray the same for you. Threshold is a word we use a lot in this country. I use it myself to describe where we are as a nation. Crucible moment is another, to connote the possibility of transformation when elements come together under pressure and heat. And when we find ourselves there, we want to be brave. But it's important to acknowledge, too, that as we step up to the plate, more than likely we're going to miss more balls than we hit, right? And because when that decisive moment comes in the midst of a whirlwind and we're called to act, we need to do so trusting less in ourselves than in the power and the energy and the spirit that's compelling us forward. But here is the surprising truth, and I end with this. Acceptance of our imperfect perceptions, our incomplete understandings, our woefully inadequate actions, and rather small place in the scheme of things is paradoxically and wonderfully empowering. For when the moment comes to you or to me, the call to be brave in some way, we do so trusting less in ourselves and more in the Spirit that's driving us. We don't have to be perfect, which is a good thing because we won't be. And we don't have to take on the entire world, just our corner of it. We'll never know the ultimate significance of our actions and our words. But what a relief it is to meet God there in the moment of change.